That book by Sidney Powell I was just talking about, it's 4 years old. It's from 2014. It's called License to Lie. And it's in-depth what happened with the Enron trials and the Ted Stevens prosecution. That was also thrown out after they destroyed him. And there's a bunch of people that are in every one of these cases she writes about, and many of them have a lot to do with Mueller, one of them in particular named Andrew Weissman. But beyond that, I'm reading this book kind of slowly. It is written beautifully. It's a page turner. It's stunning. It's stunning. The lawlessness in the Department of Justice that has nothing to do with left or right. It's not just liberal. It happens under every president, and its primary focus, at least to the phase I'm at in the book, is the fact that the prosecution, the Department of Justice, United States attorneys, suborn perjury from their own witnesses. I mean, they have their own witnesses lie, specifically, which happened in the Ted Stevens case. They do not turn over exculpatory evidence to the defense. It was an FBI agent whistleblower who, if he had not spoken up, Ted Stevens' conviction would have stood, and he would still be considered to be fraudulent and corrupt. And he was totally set up. He was set up by people who wanted scalps. And the book claims that nothing's changed in the Department of Justice since those days, or very little. And some of you, I'm sure, may have already read it, heard about it. Sidney Powell's a frequent guest and has been on cable TV shows for a while. I don't know why I'm just now getting to it, but somebody just recently recommended it to me. But it is, it's shocking, and it's going to shock a lot of people because the day-to-day rules of order in federal court, the judge and the prosecutors rely on each other. They trust each other. The defense already has a difficult burden in federal court because the prosecutors are allowed basically to run the courtroom, and it's just the way it's always been set up. And now with the apparent corruption that was running rampant there, and some of those people got promoted, some of those people in the Enron task force, every one of their cases was overturned. They were Judge Emmett Sullivan actually held a bunch of them in contempt, and they're working now for some of the biggest private sector law firms in the country. Nothing happened to them. They got away with it, even those who were called out by name. It just lets you know what you're up against if the Department of Justice ever starts coming after you. And it'll shock a lot of people because the presumption is that law enforcement is clean and pure as the wind-driven snow. They don't have time to waste falsely charging people. Now, I know people are well aware of exceptions to this. But all I mean is, if you're reading the paper, if you're watching the news, and you hear that law enforcement says X about a crime, that something happened, they define and describe what happened, and they tell you who they think did it, you just believe it. They have a natural existing credibility. God, country, flag, law enforcement, so forth and so on. But, man, the information that she learned and exposed in this book is just shocking. And it has, it's reignited some concerns I have of what's going on with Mueller here and his investigation, the people running it, such as this raid on Manafort's house at 6 o'clock in the morning while he was cooperating. Anyway, it was Kirsten Gillibrand. Moving back to the news of the day. License to Lie and it's a long one, 600 some odd pages. So if you go get it, be prepared to sink in with it for a while. But I'm telling you, it won't take you long to get into this. And you'll be having all kinds of. She portrays these judges on the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans as incompetent, uninterested, and whatever the prosecutors say is, and there's never any doubt, and it's an impossible mountain to climb. And she describes all this as a rude, a shocking, eye-opening experience for her as well. But I was so excited to see how this thing ended because I'm at the point where she has finally discovered that there's a couple people in the DOJ who are behind all of this, and they're doing it for reasons the reader would never understand, but she hasn't yet named these people. So I went to the back of the book, to the epilogue, to find out if I could just who she's talking about. And I still don't know the names of the people she's talking about, but I did conclude that at the end of the book, she doesn't think anything's changed, despite all that was learned about the corruption and the tactics that were used to gain convictions for truly innocent people who were sent to jail and their lives were destroyed and they hadn't even done anything and their indictments didn't even list a crime. And welcome back. A brand new week of broadcast excellence. I'll bet some of you thought that I wasn't going to be here today because it's the 4th of July weekend. But that's not correct. Here today, here tomorrow. We aren't going to be here. We have a best of on Wednesday. Is that what we're running? Or we have a you have a best of on Wednesday, and it'll be back here on Thursday and Friday. Well, you say they wanted Ted Stevens' Senate seat, but it was the George W. Bush DOJ that railroaded Ted Stevens. Ted Stevens was a Republican. George W. Bush was a Republican. And so Alberto Gonzalez, the attorney, they were all Republicans. What were they doing going after Ted Stevens? And if it was rogue Democrat prosecutors in the DOJ that got away with this, why didn't the Republicans in the DOJ stop them? You want to call this partisan, but I don't know how you can when you've got the Bush DOJ destroying a Republican senator like Ted Stevens. Now, it could well be that somebody had a tiff with Stevens over something. He was appropriations. He'd been in there 40 years. You know what Stevens lost his seat over? If you'll excuse me for a second here, just so you remember, Ted Stevens was from Alaska. He was accused of not reporting favorable conditions to him by contract. He was remodeling his house or some such thing. Now, follow me on this. He's remodeling his house, and he, on his disclosure forms, claimed that it was $160,000. That's what he was charged, and that's what he paid. The prosecutors said that the contractor was offered bribes to report different numbers. That it was made to look like Stevens had lied, that he had received a much greater benefit than he had reported. It turns out that the value of the work done was only $80,000. The contractor had screwed Ted Stevens, and the prosecutors knew this, and the prosecutors told the lead witness, the contractor, to lie, which he did. That also happened in Enron trials. I mean, it's outrageous when you read this stuff. And it made big news when it was happening, but it was locally contained in Washington, this news, and in Alaska. It ended up the judge in the case, Emmett Sullivan, just excoriated the prosecutors in this case. The lead prosecutor, the guy that ran this prosecution, was a guy named Friedrich. And he was all over television bragging about the charges and then bragging about the conviction. And shortly after he left the department, went into private practice and escaped the wrath of Judge Sullivan. The line prosecutors actually prosecuted a case, were investigated, were held in contempt. It was unprecedented for Department of Justice prosecutors to be treated this way by a federal judge. But it was outrageous what they did to Ted Stevens. They literally made up a charge. Ted Stevens got screwed. He paid $160,000 for $80,000 worth of work. He ends up getting screwed. They charged him with lying about how much benefit he got from the contractor. And then they told the contractor to lie on the stand, which the contractor did because he was scared of them. It's not the kind of stuff you think happens in the United States. Now, Sidney Powell in her book does not allege that this was done to get Ted Stevens' seat, that nevertheless happened. I mean, you might want to use common sense and conclude it, but this was all done under the auspices of a Republican Department of Justice. This happened during the George W. Bush presidency. And in fact, it was Eric Holder. Are you ready for this? When Obama came into office is when all this against Stevens was reversed and made right. And Eric Holder, within a month, I believe, of taking office, got to claim credit for cleaning up the DOJ and getting rid of this poison and dropping the indictment and vacating the guilty verdict from the jury and setting Ted Stevens free. The Obama Department of Justice got the credit for cleaning the place up. And all that happened was the calendar. It wasn't that Holder decided anything was right or wrong. He just, hey, this is a great benefit for us, man. Alberto Gonzalez and the previous occupants here totally botched this case, and we can look like the greatest supermen for justice in the world by letting this Stevens guy go, which they did. He'd already lost his Senate seat, so they were not putting him back in the Senate. Ted Stevenson died in a plane crash not long after and never saw the justice that was meted out to the prosecutors that shafted him. But it isn't just Ted Stevens. I don't know what you remember about Enron, but I think 4 out of 5 of the Enron convictions were overturned at the Supreme Court because of prosecutorial misconduct and a number of other things. There's a story about a guy named James Brown at Merrill Lynch who didn't do a thing wrong, that was sent to prison and then let out by the Fifth Circuit when they discovered that the sentence was incorrect, and the government went back and tried to put him back in jail. Being beaten up by people. He was in a, not max security, but it wasn't a camp. It wasn't a white-collar prison. This guy lost 30 pounds. He lost all faith in himself and his family, his country. Right before he was sentenced to jail, or right before he was to report, his son nearly died in an auto accident in Colorado. And there was no sympathy shown for it. But the guy didn't do anything. He didn't do anything wrong. And Scooter Libby, I mean, all of these things are happening. Scooter Libby didn't do anything. The guy that leaked was Richard Armitage. Nothing happened to him. Now we got the same kind of thing going on with Robert Mueller's team, zeroing in on Trump and what's his face, Cohen, and whoever else, Manafort. And when you read through this, it's jaw-dropping. And then I found myself asking, I know everything. Why? How did I miss all of this when it was happening? Well, a lot of it was happening in New Orleans at the Fifth Circuit on the Enron stuff. The Ted Stevens stuff I remember in a general sense, but while it drew a huge press contingent, it was largely Washington. There was some national attention, but Alaska and Washington got most of the details. Again, because this did not make the DOJ look good at all. And we now know the DOJ, we look what's happening with the spying operation they've run on Trump, and they're embedding all of these operatives like Stephen Halper and Mifsud, and this effort to go get Trump on this Russia collusion business. It's Banana Republic kind of stuff. And she concludes in her book, License to Lie Again, that nothing's really changed there, even after all of this had been exposed. Anyway, Kirsten Gillibrand, we're going back here to ICE and getting rid of ICE. You know what this is? This is just Black Lives Matter moving over to the Border Patrol people. That's all it is. It's the same bunch. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the Vagina Hat Crew. It's the same bunch. It's the George Soros bought and paid for professional protest mob. And they just move from issue to issue to issue based on their hatred of Donald Trump. And so now they've moved on to ICE. And here's Kirsten Gillibrand. It was kind of just this was not her first mention of it. It was kind of a throwaway line when she first mentioned getting rid of ICE. This was Thursday night on Fredo Primetime on CNN. Fredo Cuomo talking to Gillibrand about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her big win and her position on banning ICE. And Fredo said she wants to get rid of ICE. Now, what are you going to do with your party if you come into a majority and you have a significant number of people who have that kind of position.
Well, I agree with it. I don't think ICE today is working as intended.
Well, you think you should get rid of the agency?
I believe that it has become a deportation force, and I think you should separate the criminal justice from the immigration issues, and I think you should reimagine ICE under a new agency with a very different mission and take those two missions out.
Okay, so she says this, and they're all off and running with it now, because it's one thing for some little representative just won an election, not even in the House of Representatives yet, to start talking about, for a United States senator to pick up on it, and then everybody fell in line. And it is nuts. But I don't want them to stop talking this way. I want them to keep. So I'm sitting here thinking, should I encourage them? And if I do that, I'm going to lose you. But these people are talking themselves right out of whatever victory they thought they had. And Gillibrand is a hypocrite to boot. When she was just elected to a House seat in upstate New York, way back before she was a senator, when Gillibrand was just elected to a rather conservative House seat in upstate New York, she was singing a different tune on illegal immigration. New York Times, 2009, quote, during her one term in the House, from a largely rural, traditionally Republican district, Gillibrand was on safe political ground, adopting a tough stance against illegal immigration. Ms. Gillibrand opposed any sort of amnesty for illegal immigrants, supported deputizing local law enforcement officers to enforce federal immigration laws. She spoke out against Eliot Spitzer's, he does it with his socks on, proposal to allow illegal immigrants to have driver's licenses, and she sought to make English the official language of the U.S. That's 8 years ago. 9 years ago. 9 years ago. She has done a total 180 based on the people she's representing. So what core principles does she have? Zero. Absolutely zero. Zip, zero, nada. Kirsten Gillibrand, core principles do not exist. She's flighty, fluid, flexible, says whatever needs to be said based on who and what she thinks her audience is. Got to take a break. Back with more after this.
Listen to what the left doesn't want you to hear. Rush on the EIB Network.
Okay, things are popping here, folks. Got to move quickly. El Rushbo executing assigned host duties flawlessly, zero mistakes. Jeffrey Toobin just now. It's like these people are listening to me and giving me fodder, although I know that's not the case. But listen to this. Toobin was just on CNN. Jeffrey Toobin is legal beagle over there. And the affiliate host, Erica Hill, they're all excited that Michael Cohen, Trump's fixer lawyer, apparently told Stephanopoulos that he's not going to go down for anybody. So now they're all interpreting that means Cohen's going to flip on Trump. Well, Cohen could be flipping on any number of people, or he couldn't be flipping on anybody. Nobody knows what he's going to do. Nobody has the slightest idea what Cohen's going to do. Least of all Stephanopoulos. They're just making this stuff up. So in the process of discussing whether or not Cohen is going to flip and be called a liar, Hill says, sorry, I don't see Michael Cohen doing that. Is this setting Cohen up to be called a liar in case he does flip? Because everybody thinks he's going to flip. So now the long knives are out for Cohen. You can't believe him. He doesn't tell the truth. And here's what Toobin says in response to that question.
Can I just say, as a former federal prosecutor, just to respond to what the president said in that tweet, federal prosecutors do not actually get people to lie. That is unethical. It is illegal. So the idea that prosecutors just allow people to lie when they cooperate is just, it's something that not only a president of the United States shouldn't say, anyone who's informed about the way the American legal...
Go get the book, License to Lie by Sidney Powell. I just learned she even has a website set up that outlines all that's going on in the DOJ, and it's designed to help people who end up being charged with a federal crime. It's called creepsonamission.com. But you go read the book, Mr. Toobin, and you'll find out the prosecutors, not only did they lie, they suborned perjury on their own witnesses. They did it throughout the Enron trials, and they did it in the Ted Stevens case. They told the contractor to lie about what Stevens told him and about what he told Stevens. See, this is my point. You have these people, former federal lawyers, judges, and so forth, and they come out and prosecutors, oh no, it's unethical, it's illegal. Prosecutors do not actually get people to lie. Well, not according to Sidney Powell, who is a practicing attorney and has a wide experience. But she doesn't come from Harvard or Yale, and so she was not all that popular with her colleagues. The judges that she spoke before, for the most part, liked her, she says. But they do. That's the whole point of her book. Not only, Toobin, do they lie, they do not turn over exculpatory evidence that they have. The stuff that they withheld from Ted Stevens, if they had been forced, no, they were forced. If they had followed the law and turned over all Brady material is a legal term for exculpatory. When the prosecutors have evidence that could show innocence on the part of the accused, they are required to turn it over. They were not. Throughout the Enron trials, they held on to it. They wrote summaries of the exculpatory evidence they had, which were impossible to translate and read, and turned those over. And they did the same thing in the Ted Stevens case. I think the contractor in the Ted Stevens case, his name is Bill Allen, something Allen, A-L-L-E-N. This guy, everybody's scared to death of these people once they can. When they give you immunity and when they tell you that you're scot-free and that they're not ever going to come after you, if you just say what they want you to say, everybody in the world will do it, because nobody wants the federal DOJ coming after them. But for Toobin to say this, can I just respond to the president here? Federal prosecutors do not actually get people to lie. According to Sidney Powell, it's de rigueur. It's part of the day-to-day workings of the DOJ is to get witnesses to lie. At least among the cases she was familiar in writing about here. It's shocking. And so Toobin goes on to say, a president of the United States should not say anyone who's informed about the way the American legal system works should know that that's just not how federal prosecutions work in this country. Mr. Toobin, it's apparently you who don't know. Who doesn't know how prosecutions. All we have to do is look at the garbage that has been this FBI Trump investigation. You want to stand behind that? You want to defend that? Spies, informants embedded in the campaign, looking for a crime that nobody can find? Good grief. Back here just a second. Don't go away.
And you thought it couldn't get any better. Rush.
We don't have a Republican Department of Justice. And we haven't had a Republican. We have an establishment Department of Justice. We have a swamp Department of Justice, like we have a swamp Department of State. We never have a Republican Department of State. And the left is embedded in there after years and years and years of appointments and so forth. It may take a long time to exterminate them all out of there. Anyway, greetings and welcome back. Great to have you, Rush Limbaugh, having more fun doing what I was born to do, hosting this program before the people of the United States of America, the most listened to radio talk show out there. Telephone number 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Here are the top two picks, supposedly, for the Supreme Court at the top of President Trump's list. Now, the story comes from the Daily Caller, and this, of course, the website created by Chatsworth Osborne Jr., who has now recused himself from it since he's hosting the 8 p.m. show on Fox every night. But according to the Daily Caller, multiple sources familiar with the process say that Amy Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh are front runners to replace Anthony Kennedy on the Supreme Court. Sources say an anti-Kavanaugh whisper campaign is afoot and that the president has heard about it. Now, I, of course, as you would expect, know what that whisper campaign is about. And it happens to be about Obamacare. The whisper campaign circulating about Brett Kavanaugh simply is that it was Kavanaugh who told John Roberts how to save Obamacare. That Kavanaugh firmly believes that there is a constitutional way to mandate the American people buy something. This story comes from the... Yeah, wouldn't you know it? The website doesn't. I think this may actually be the Daily Caller as well. How potential SCOTUS pick Brett Kavanaugh wrote a roadmap for saving Obamacare. The story is by a writer named Christopher Jacobs. Which is worse? And let me before the Federalist. There you go, the Federalist. I'm sorry. You know, when you use the Apple Reader Safari setting, sometimes it'll eliminate the web link that the story is in, so you don't know unless you make a mental note. And sometimes it eliminates the name of the writer. Don't know why, one of those software quirks. Which is worse, is the subhead, an unelected judge opining on how a mandate to purchase a product could meet constitutional muster, or giving Congress instructions on how to ensure that it will. Brett Kavanaugh did both. This is the whisper campaign that's out there trying to destroy Kavanaugh. And it could be legit. The long knives are out for people from all sides of the aisle, folks. I'm sure that there would be Republicans and so-called conservative intellectuals who would try to undermine certain Republican so-called conservative nominees. The Democrats clearly will do the same. So it's going to be up to Trump and his team to properly vet this. But here's the scoop on Kavanaugh. 2015 dissent to an Obamacare case. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia famously opined that the Supreme Court had concluded that this limitation would prevent the rest of Obamacare from working as well as hoped. So it rewrites the law. We should start calling this SCOTUS care. If you remember the Obamacare ruling, John Roberts declared, and you remember this, folks, the first news report that we got was that the court had declared Obamacare unconstitutional. And you remember the cheering? And it wasn't 5 minutes later that the rest of the opinion was digested. And we found out that while the court had indicated that Obamacare was unconstitutional, it turns out the court, John Roberts, rewrote certain segments of it, ostensibly, to make it constitutional. That Roberts didn't want to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, which denied the first African-American president his signature piece of legislation. So they rewrote it to make it constitutional. And Scalia referenced that in his dissent by saying that this limitation would prevent the rest of Obamacare from working as well as it hoped. So it rewrites the law. He accused the majority, the Chief Justice, of rewriting the law. To the news. Last week's retirement announcement from Justice Kennedy, coupled with the news placing Brett Kavanaugh high on Trump's list to replace Kennedy. By the way, Kavanaugh is a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. That is, it's either number one or number two in America, probably number one. A seat on the D.C. Circuit is thought by many to be the next rung on the ladder to the Supreme Court. Anyway, the news placing Kavanaugh high on Trump's list to replace Kennedy has drawn attention back to the legal wrangling over the Obamacare law. Some observers have claimed that Kavanaugh, in a 2011 opinion written when the D.C. Circuit considered Obamacare's constitutionality, supported the law's individual mandate. As in many other cases, however, the truth contains more nuance than that simple declaration. Even as he avoided a definitive ruling on the merits of the case, Kavanaugh revealed himself as favorably disposed to the mandate. Worst of all, in so doing, he cultivated a theory that ultimately led Chief Justice John Roberts to uphold the mandate. Most of Kavanaugh's opinion discusses interpretations of statute that hardly qualify as an enlightening discourse of constitutional principles, whereas his two circuit court colleagues upheld the mandate as a valid exercise of Congress's power. Under the Commerce Clause, Kavanaugh dissented as to jurisdiction and did not decide the merits. His dissent arose from his belief that the 1867 Anti-Injunction Act precluded the court from deciding the merits of the individual mandate, which is the route that Chief Justice Roberts took in massaging Obamacare to make it constitutional. We all remember this. The whisper campaign is that Kavanaugh provided the roadmap for Chief Justice Roberts to uphold the constitutionality of Obamacare. So we'll see where this goes. Clearly, there is an effort to keep Kavanaugh off the bench, to keep him away from being nominated. Whether this is accurate or not, time will tell. The other nominee is Amy Barrett. You know, a lot of people are in favor of Trump nominating a solid conservative woman on the basis it'll be much tougher to reject her. Do you buy that, Mr. Snerdley? I don't. I know where the left is concerned. They're not going to be. You show me where they back off of conservative women now. They don't. In fact, they hate conservative women even more than conservative men. They consider them the utmost biggest traitors to the whole feminist cause. So, sources involved in the process say the anti-Kavanaugh whisper campaign has been underway since the news of Kennedy's retirement broke. And the potential nomination of Amy Barrett, a lot of people like her, by the way, just to toss that in. So that's the latest on the Supreme Court nomination. And again, the Daily Caller is the source authority on that. Now, moving back to the regular stack of stuff, because, folks, we have a doozy. Michael Shearer, writing in the Washington Post, a bad week for Democrats gives rise to a big problem. Outrage could become an obstacle in the midterms. Growing liberal agitation over a pivotal Supreme Court retirement and a simmering crisis about immigrant child separation have left Democrat leaders scrambling to keep the political outrage they'd counted on to fuel midterm election wins from becoming a liability. Wait a minute, liability? I thought you wanted all this energy. I thought you wanted this motivation. I thought you wanted all of this desire. I thought you Democrats wanted, but they know. They know that the radical left is becoming the face of the party. And you know what else? Who is making this possible? The media. The media is making it. You know, I still chuckle when I see stories talking about how the media following the lead of Democrat Party leaders. Give me a break. It's the other way around. It's the media that's taking the Democrat Party to the left by making stars out of these radical fruitcakes, by heaping endless praise on them. But even in the media, they are torn because they like these old warhorse Democrats like Joe Crowley and Pelosi and all these other people that have been around there for years. They're their cocktail party buddies, babysitters and all this kind of stuff. Now here come these new young radical millennials, and everybody's a little worried about them because nobody knows how to control them. And I think this is the whole thing about chickens coming home to roost. You know, you can't, as the Democrats have done, as the left has done, you cannot radicalize people 2 generations in a row and have it not take. They have been radicalizing people in kindergarten. They've been trying to radicalize people in elementary school, middle school, high school, certainly at the university level. They've been teaching them. They have been promoting some of the most wacko, extremist, radical stuff, and you can't blame it for taking. I mean, these kids have been exposed to it for how many years? It's always taught with a bunch of utopian romance, idyllic dreams of a perfect future where there is no suffering and where there is no pain and where there is no sadness and where there's no disappointment. This is the kind of stuff that's taught, and it's taught combined with an uncontrollable rage and hatred for conservatives and Republicans. And so I think there may be some of these professors, not many, but a few, some professors and some ranking Democrats who privately are saying, gosh, we never intended these people to go this wacko. But, they've exaggerated and pounded in order to get through to young skulls full of mush. They have exaggerated to make the point. They're radicals themselves. And so what they have been teaching has taken hold among some of these young people, and they appear to be dyed-in-the-wool believers. And the big difference is that whereas your traditional Democrat would learn to camouflage and mask his genuine liberalism and radical leftism, these young kids don't care about hiding it. They don't want to mask it. They don't want to camouflage themselves. They don't want to win under moderate pretense. They want to go out there. They are loaded for bear. They've been taught to hate this country. They have been taught to believe that this country is unfair and unjust and immoral from the get-go, and they are hell-bent on fixing that, changing that, correcting that by getting rid of borders, by letting anybody who wants to come into the country get in, by not pursuing any criminal activity, by letting people in prisons go. And they don't care to hide this from anybody. They're right out in front with it. And your rank-and-file experienced Democrats like Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they're cringing because they know that this is not how you win national elections. America is not socialist. America is not Venezuela. America is not Cuba. America is not China. It's not North Korea. It's not even close. And in order for liberal Democrats to win, they have had to hide who they really are. They've had to hide what they really believe. And like Obama, they had to hide what they were really going to do. Oh, Obama. You believe? Oh, Obama was in Beverly Hills last week. And you know what his message was to liberals? He would go to he went to Beverly Hills fundraiser, and apparently he was introduced as still the president of the United States. And apparently a lot of people said, we wish you could come back. Oh, my God, we miss you so much. We wish you were still president. And you know what Obama supposedly told him? You got to stop loving me so much. You got to stop being in love with me so much. I'll have details of this coming up and others, plus your phone calls when we get back. We're not going back because we haven't been yet. So we're going to start on the phones. We got Keith in Los Angeles. I'm glad you called, sir. What's shaking?
Hey, Rush. Good to talk to you. Just scanning through the news this weekend, it wasn't really hard for me to see, why so many people were taken to the streets to abolish ICE, or why a bunch of, politicians were either. If you accept the premise that, A, the Democrats are still a wing of the media, you realize that the media is the one that drummed up the story about the families being separated. And your only logical conclusion is to get rid of the people that are separating them. Is that correct?
Meaning Trump.
No, ICE.
Oh, ICE.
So the media is screaming about.
So no, see, ICE is just following the law. That's what's cocky. See, you asked me a question. Get rid of the people separating. Well, that's Trump. Trump's demanding the law be enforced. That's the difference here. You think ICE.
They can't get rid of Trump. They're trying to do that.
They're just ICE, just the enforcement mechanism. Getting rid of ICE doesn't change anything.
Correct.
No, actually, it would if you disband the law that they enforce. But
I mean,
So you think the media is driving this? That's your point?
Absolutely. And, getting people on the streets, it's the one move that they still got, And after so many losses, after suffering so many losses at the polls, I think they're struggling to realize or to demonstrate that they still got it. They can still throw tens of thousands of people out on the street to rally behind.
Well, I think I do think there's validity to that. I think since this program started in 1988, to be quite honest with you folks, the media has taken advantage of several occasions to prove to themselves they've still got it. Trying to get rid of Trump. They got rid of one president, Nixon. They're trying to show themselves, as much as anybody else, that they've still got that juice. Or destroy any political opponent. They love demonstrating or attempting to illustrate that they still have that kind of influence. But I'm telling you, these people marching, I don't disagree with you that the media plays an active role here, but without the money from George Soros and the community organizing skills, don't think Barack Obama's not involved here, folks. Everybody says, where's Obama? Obama. Yes, he is. Obama's got a staff of 20 people working at his house, organizing for America. That's his PAC. It may be called Organizing for Action or some such thing. But I was half wrong in my prediction of Obama's behavior post-presidency. I thought he would be in front of cameras, openly disagreeing with whichever Republican president won anytime an unraveling of an Obama policy or agenda was taking place. And I was right that he would do it, but I was wrong about how. I think, Obama is the guy who knows Alinsky tactics. Obama is the guy that was taught them and then spread them around from the White House. You couldn't do this. You couldn't have, look at, the same people that were wearing the vagina hats after the first week of the Trump presidency, the same people out there demanding get rid of ICE. It's the same people, folks. It's the same groups. They're either called Black Lives Matter one day, Antifa the next. Now whatever they're calling it wouldn't happen without George Soros money and other money from big Democrat donors. The media may be motivating them to get on the street, but these people are being paid in many ways to get out there as well.
Do you have trouble?
Let me stick with the phones. We have a retired federal prosecutor on the phone from Boise, Idaho. Hi, Chuck. I'm glad you called, sir. What's up?
Rush, it's an honor to speak with you. I agree with the vast majority of what you've been saying today. I just wanted to qualify a little bit. I was a federal prosecutor for 30 years, working in both D.C. under Joe DeGenova and then in Kansas City for the last 25 years. I actually retired a year early because I read the polls and thought Hillary was going to win, and I could not work for that department anymore. It had changed. I do want to say that in many aspects, the department is like the FBI, or what we hear people saying about the FBI, and that is that there is still a great deal of integrity at the lower line level, and that it is the headquarters that is so politically polluted. I don't think the majority of federal prosecutors would suborn perjury, especially if it's not a case where politics are infecting it. If it's just, for example, a major drug case and there's no headquarters interest in it, no headquarters fingers in the pudding. I worked with a lot of very fine people, and I just want to make sure that we don't give the impression to your listeners that every case is as infected as the Enron one was, or that as the Ted Stevens case was.
Well, that's a good point, and I'm glad that you got through here to throw that little splash of water on it. I probably was painting with a bit of a broad brush, but I was motivated when played the soundbite of Jeffrey Toobin saying federal prosecutors don't lie. I have just read documented accounts where they not only lie, they suborn perjury. But you worked? Did you say you worked in D.C. at DOJ headquarters?
No, I was in the field office. I was hired by Joe DeGenova and was a line prosecutor there, and then I went out to Kansas City and finished my career there. Spent the majority of time there.
Well, I should specify that, and you're right. I'm referring to things that I've learned reading a book called License to Lie by a lawyer named Sidney Powell, who is.
And I'm familiar with that case, and I think the book is excellent. And one other aspect of it, I'm not sure she gets into it enough, is that when all the abuses, the subornation of perjury and the concealment of exculpatory evidence came to light under Holder, even though it was a Bush prosecution, he tried to throw the line assistants in Anchorage under the bus, even though it was some of his supervisors in Washington who had made those calls. And there were several of us in the Association of Assistant U.S. Attorneys. It's not a union, just a loose dues-paying association, who had to go to bat for those guys to keep them from getting fired when they were not the culpable party.
Well, yeah, that's one of the great ironies is that all of this stuff happens while George W. Bush is in the White House, and the Obama crew comes in, and they get to play the horse, the knight on the white horse, by vacating the guilty verdict and coming in and looking. We can't believe what this department did, and it's never going to happen anymore. We're putting this is unbelievable. They got to play white horse, knight on white horse, and so forth when the other people had done it. But even with that, I have to tell you, I've lived long enough now to not be Pollyannish. I was stunned, Chuck, when I read this book about the details of these Enron cases and the Ted Stevens case. And I was paying attention. We were talking about those cases on this program when they were happening. I was stunned. The general reporting during the time of each of those cases got nowhere near what had really happened. It got closer in the Stevens case, but the Enron case, there was so much. The media had drummed up so much hatred for anybody and anything Enron that nobody cared what kind of tactics were used to nail them.
Well, you're very correct again, and, it's an axiom in the law, bad cases make bad law. I have found that the more politics are involved, the more money is involved, the same thing holds true. And there are unethical prosecutors out there who go around saying you can't appeal an acquittal, and they will take every shortcut and every dirty trick to try and get the conviction. I had one experience with that in the line out of 29 years, actually. And I was actually a second chair on the case, and a witness left the courtroom crying, and I went out and asked her what was wrong, and she said, he made me lie. And I marched her right back in, interrupted the proceedings, put her back on the stand, and had her correct her testimony. And when the prosecutor, who was the first chair in the case, asked me what the hell I was doing, I said, we're going to correct her testimony, and if you stop me, I'm going to knock you into the next county. I don't make that statement just to glorify myself, but because I think that is the attitude that most of the line prosecutors had and still have.
Well, this is what we're hearing during this period where the FBI leadership is coming under severe analysis and criticism. We hear, yeah, but man, most of the people, the FBI, the agents, the analysts, they are the cream of the crop, and if they could speak out, they would tell you how outraged they are by it. So,
and I know them, and they are outraged by it, as I am outraged by the guy I call Rotten Rod Rosenstein, because if any of us had signed off on the FISA application knowing that it was based in the slightest part on a false affidavit, Rotten Rod and Company would have hired me for New York Minute. And yet there's a different standard for this crew at the top, and there has been for several years, which is, again, why I left a year early, because like Sidney, I was writing my own book. I'm not seeking a plug or anything, but I knew that if I published it, I would be out on the street in a heartbeat. The things that she gets into in those two specific cases are really just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, that's what she says. And at the end of the book, she says that despite learning all this, despite us exposing it, nothing's really changed.
Well, that's, again, at the headquarters level. I do not still believe that it bleeds down into everyday casework. I think there's lots of people with ethics and who still believe that a prosecutor's job is to seek the truth. Maybe I'm Pollyannish in that regard, but I don't think so based on what I saw in all of those years where I was with the department.
That's what everybody believes. Everybody's been raised to believe that. Everybody's been raised to believe that the law enforcement people are out for justice, not scalps and convictions to climb the ladder and so forth. But people are people. People can be corrupted. People can be corrupt. And the idea that we have any government agency that is immune from this is absurd. But the Department of Justice, for the longest time, has gotten the benefit of the doubt that it's an incredible amount of power these people have, particularly at headquarters. You can't compete with them in terms of money alone. If they want to get you, they'll find a way. And you hope that the people they want to get deserve to be gotten. But that's not what you read when you read this book, License to Kill. Folks, I didn't even intend to bring this up today. It's just something I'm reading in my spare time. I'm not reading it for show prep. Something happened today that in the first hour that made me reference this. And I didn't intend for it to become as much a discussion topic today as it has. But it is relevant because I'm telling you, a lot of the people that are exposed as corrupt in her book are working right now with Robert Mueller trying to nail Donald Trump. They've gotten away with everything they did, despite being cited for contempt, despite being investigated. They're still being highly paid. Some of them went into private practice. Mueller brought them back from private practice to run his operation. And the 16 primary lawyers and investigators on Mueller's team are all Hillary Clinton Democrats, which is why Trump keeps talking. Trump is wise to continue to tweet about this. He is extremely wise to continue to tweet about this because he's doing something nobody ever has the guts to do when they're up against the Justice Department. That's fight back. That just makes them look at Cohen. Great example. This is Michael Cohen. Look what he's doing today. Cohen, whatever he's facing, and we don't know, he is scared to death. He's out praising the prosecutors. He is thanking the prosecutors. He is telling the world that he is assured the prosecutors are going to be fair, that they only want what's just and right. He is scared to death of them. And he thinks that he cannot confront them at all, no matter what he really thinks they're doing. And maybe they are behaving in ways that he's accurately describing. I don't know. I'm just telling you that the natural tendency is when powerful people are coming at you, don't provoke them. But that's the opposite of what Trump does. Trump is provoking them and taking them head on because he's not going to sit there and be victimized by this without being saying nothing and doing nothing. And I think he's wise in these tactics that he's employing by challenging the honor and the integrity of what's going on based on what we know of the people Mueller hired. Anyway, I got to take a break. I appreciate the call very much, Chuck. We'll be back with more after this. Don't go away.
The center of the radio universe.
And we go stick with the phones here. Rush Limbaugh, great to have you on the one and only EIB network. As usual, half of my amazing brain tied behind my back just to keep everything fair, equal, and equitable so that nobody gets hurt. Here is Evron in Toms River, New Jersey. Evron, great to have you with us, sir. How are you?
Very good. Rush, thanks for all you do. I've been listening for maybe 3 years. I love your show. It's great. It's always something interesting to listen to. And this is my first time getting on the air.
Glad you made it.
Yeah, thank you for all. Anyway, so over the weekend while I was catching up on all the random, pieces of information that get pushed to the side, I saw an ad by Alexandria Cortez, that, crazy socialist woman in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And she said in the ad that in order to make our community feel safer, we need to abolish ICE. I mean, that's as ridiculous as someone suggesting that in order to stop the opioid crisis, we should make fentanyl an over-the-counter drug. I mean, so you're going to take away law enforcement in order to make the streets safer? It's clearly insane, and I just don't understand that people fall for that.
Okay, now this is good. I'm glad you called, because here's the thing. I have been trying to impress upon people in the face of this genuine insanity that they believe it. So I want you to try as you've just put yourself in their head, put yourself in their shoes, and I want you to imagine actually believing it, that the secret, that the route to success or happiness or whatever it is they want is getting rid of ICE and eliminating border control. Can you imagine in any sane moment actually believing that?
No. I think I'm a little too sane to believe that.
They do. They're not just saying it. This is the thing that people have to realize. They literally believe it. If these people ever become large enough to win elections, they will try to do this. And you have to ask yourself, what's the starting point? What is the status quo in their minds that makes them believe getting rid of law enforcement on the border makes America better? Well, you have to realize that the starting point is, in their minds, America is unjust, America sucks, America's immoral, America needs massive fixing. And that should scare if you take the time to actually put yourself in their shoes and situations, start thinking the way they do, you'll find, it's very difficult to do, but it's scary because they do believe this. This is not just rhetoric to gender and gin up support. They believe it.
I just can't imagine myself believing that. It's too insane, you know?
Well, then there's the next step. Whatever percentage of the country that's supporting these people, 10%, 15%, they believe it. It's not just Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's all the numbskulls that voted for her. And now, because she won an election and is a media darling, now you've got Elizabeth Warren and Kirsten Gillibrand and a number of other so-called mainstream Democrats, Dick Durbin, picking up the theme. So now the entire Democrat Party, ostensibly, is echoing that theme, that America could be more just, America could be better if we get rid of law enforcement at the border. In other words, let anybody in who wants in. Now, if that's what you really believe, then what must you think of your country? You must have a lot of hatred for it. You must think this country has really done something massively wrong by constructing borders and controlling who gets in here. You know, this is the multicultural thinking that believes throwing all kinds of different cultures and skin colors and religions, and you take whatever demographics you want and you mix it all together, and somehow that's the only way anything can be just and fair. And it is just, the question is, it's very simple. As I asked in the first hour, and that's not a question, it's statement, there's nothing wrong with America remaining America, but it
despite the
certainly
fact
is
that they
wrong
know
to
nothing
these
about
people.
the motive, and what we know now is
They think there's something terribly wrong with America remaining America. And this all starts with the popular conception of this is Barack Obama's transforming America, but it all traces back to these people being genuine communists and socialists. And communism and socialism are the avowed enemy of the United States of America, and they always have been. And these people are now attempting to say that, of course, capitalism and constitutional liberty and freedom are the problem because they're exclusionary and they are only for certain people. The majority only guarantees those things for certain people, not all, and evidenced by the fact that we have a wall. If we were really devoted to freedom and liberty and justice for all, we would let anybody in and we would give them whatever they want to have a nice life. It's unsupportable. It's unsustainable. But as you say, when you really try intellectually and emotionally to become one of these people, you can't do it. You can't do it. You cannot actually make yourself believe this country would be vastly better and improved by getting rid of law enforcement on the border, but they do. And that's why they must be constantly, continually hammered and defeated and never allowed to get anywhere close to winning national power. We will be back after this.
Celebrating the American way.
Hang on. Brian Ross, the lead investigative reporter for ABC News, is out. We've lost. Do you remember what this guy did? He got suspended last December. It was last December. Brian Ross. This is the guy. By the way, greetings. Welcome back. Rush Limbaugh, 800-282-2882. Great to be with you here on the week of our nation's independence. Week celebration. Brian Ross, there was a mass shooting in Colorado. I think it was at a movie theater. Aurora, Colorado. And the first thing Brian Ross did was report that the shooter may be a member of the Republican Tea Party organization. So a mass shooter starts shooting up people, and this guy, first thing he wants to prove is that the shooter is a Tea Party Republican. So he got the shooter's name, and then he looked at Tea Party roster lists on the internet, and he found that there was a Tea Party organization in Colorado that had a similar name. So he goes on the air and reports that it might be. ABC News is attempting to confirm. We haven't confirmed yet, but ABC News is led to believe that the shooter is a Tea Party member, the Republican Party here in the state of Colorado. It was a bogus report. It was totally incorrect. Had to correct it immediately. Last December, Brian Ross reported that Donald Trump had ordered Michael Flynn to have conversations with the Russians about lifting Obama sanctions on Russia. You know, Obama had kicked a bunch of Russian diplomats out of the country last December of 2016, as they were trying to build this case that the Russians had colluded with Trump to steal the election from Hildebeest. And it turned out that this guy goes in the air and reports that Trump had told Flynn to call the Russians and promise them that those Obama sanctions on the diplomats would be lifted. He made it up. Or he had a source that made it up that he believed because he wanted, whatever. Anyway, he was suspended for a month without pay, and it was announced today that he's leaving. Dun, 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 dun. That's another one down, folks, from the drive-by media. This guy's also reported over the years that I was involved in a money laundering operation. You forgotten that? Oh, yeah, I had some, Rush Limbaugh involved in money laundering. I mean, it was the most, this guy has been exactly what is wrong with the American media. So he'll be hired by CNN probably by tonight, or MSNBC, or somewhere, and he'll become, if I know Tom Brokaw, they'll give the guy an award, and they'll have a special dinner to honor this guy, because they cannot allow the last news about Brian Ross to be that he made up a story about Michael Flynn. Anyway, we're back. It's 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. Folks, I think it is safe to say that the radical left now owns and controls the Democrat Party. And not just because this dinosaur Joe Crowley was defeated by the Marxist young woman in Queens in the Bronx, but this has been happening for a while. And it was really goosed during the presidency of Barack Obama. And there have been positive signs throughout the past 3-4 years, but they were tough to believe. Positive signs that America wasn't interested. Positive signs that America was not going the way of the media and of the Democrat Party. And you know what one of the most visible signs was? That people just refused to believe because It was too hard to believe it. And that was the abject failure of Barack Obama. He got Obamacare, but if you look at what, the first 2 years of his first term, they could have done anything because the Republicans didn't have the votes to stop anything in the House or the Senate. But it's primarily the second term where these lessons took place. You can start in 2010, Obama's first term. Look at the 60 seats the Republicans won to take back control of the House. The Tea Party comes along and organically develops out of nowhere because of Obamacare and this endless rampant spending that people genuinely feared was going to rob the futures of their kids and their grandkids. The Tea Party grows and comes along, and Democrats create Occupy Wall Street, a phony manufactured group, just like this border stories of phony manufactured crisis about Trump putting kids in cages and so forth. The whole thing was faux. It was made up. But Obama presided over, and this is the upbeat positive news, Barack Obama presided over the Democrat Party's single greatest loss of power since the 1920s, as expressed by seats of power held. Governor seats, seats in the House, seats in the Senate, state houses, all the way down to town council. The Democrat Party under Barack Obama lost over 1,200 seats of power nationwide. Practically every candidate Barack Obama endorsed went down in flames, with the biggest one being Hillary Clinton. And yet, while it was happening, there was an understandable and palpable fear of Obama, and that was generated by the fact that the media was embarrassingly in love with the guy. And I mean in love. I don't mean like, and I don't mean supportive. They were genuinely in love with the guy, and they still are. But Barack Obama-ism did not translate. His objective was to transform America. Donald Trump has come in and won one of the most unpredictable elections in the history of America, and in the process has begun to unravel much of the Obama agenda at a record pace. And the left is going batty because they can't believe any of this. They cannot believe that Trump won. They can't get over that. They cannot believe that Trump continues to win. They can't deal with it. They can't believe that Trump is unraveling their agenda that Obama had implemented. They can't accept and believe any of it. And coupled with what they already believe, they literally are being driven mad. And they're putting this madness on display daily. Here's a story from thehill.com. Democrat generation gap widens. This was a big discussion topic on CNN today, because CNN and MSNBC, the rest of the media, they are totally invested in the health and future of the Democrat Party, and they're all worried, folks. They're worried. The generation gap. What this is about is these young Marxists and communists are coming along and actually winning. I got news for you. They're not just winning. They control the Democrat Party. You look at Keith Ellison and this Tom Perez guy. Tom Perez is an avowed communist Marxist. These guys, John Brennan, who was Obama's CIA director, these people are the real deal when it comes to socialists and Marxists. That is who they believe. They're not just liberals anymore, and they certainly are not progressives. Democrats in their 70s have started pushing back against some of the more youthful members of the caucus who are making noise about launching leadership bids in the wake of caucus chairman Joe Crowley's stunning primary loss to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York. Older Democrat lawmakers argue that just because Pelosi, 78, and her top lieutenants are getting up there in years doesn't mean they're not progressive or effective. Instead, they say it's their decades of experience fighting in the trenches on a range of issues, from the gender pay gap and gun control to lesbian, gay, transgender rights, that make them the right ones to lead the fight against Trump and the Republicans. They are losing the fight. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not growing overconfident here, but they are losing the fight. Trump is rebuilding the traditional United States of America. Trump is rebuilding the capitalist foundation. It created the greatest human prosperity known in all of history. Trump is rebuilding the original founding of this country, which led to the creation of the greatest nation in the history of the world. The people opposed to Donald Trump do not want America to be strong, do not want America to be right, and do not want America to be powerful. They think that is the root of all evil in the world. They believe America must be destroyed and then rebuilt. And that's why they really believe shut down ICE. They're not just mouthing this as rhetoric, folks. They do believe it, and they're becoming unhinged. Here's a story by Michael Tomasky, however he pronounces it. This story is in the Daily Beast. Anthony Kennedy, you are a total disgrace to America. This guy is borking Kennedy on Kennedy's way out the door. Normally, you bork a nominee to keep him off the court. This guy, Tomasky, is borking Kennedy because he has the audacity to leave. I happen to think, I should not say that. I'm getting hamstrung here. I've got CNN now taking some of the things I say that are helpful, instructive to Democrats, and they're airing those clips for Democrats to react to. I was going to make a comment about Kennedy and Trump, but I'm telling you, it might make more sense for me not to say it. Yeah, I know. And it's just an opinion. I don't know anything, but if I say it, it may lead to an investigation. Well, investigate anything for no reason whatsoever. So it all has to do with Kennedy's retirement. I don't think Kennedy's retirement is coincidental, my friends. And that's as far as I'm going to go with this. And yeah, it's frustrating to have to dial it back. It's frustrating to have to put a governor on myself here. But believe me, safest way. There is a poll today out. This is from the Harvard-Harris poll. This is Mark Penn. Overwhelming support for Trump's immigration positions. Trump's, let's say, 1,448 people in the poll. 37% Democrat, 32% Republican, 29% Independent. It's of registered voters. 70% support tougher immigration enforcement to include a border wall. That's got 60% support. 64% support deportation. Repatriation of all illegal border crossers, including families with children, 61%. Additionally, 69% of voters do not support the idea of disbanding ICE. That's kind of low, 69%. But look at these numbers again. Let me go through. 70% support tougher immigration enforcement. 60% support a wall. 64% support deportation at the moment they're caught. Deportation and repatriation of all illegal border crossers, including families with children, 61%. This is mainstream, folks. Donald Trump's immigration policy is mainstream. It is not extremist. It's not radical. It's exactly what normal people in America think. We're in the midst of a titanic battle over what is normal. in the United States. And those on the fringes are out there trying to establish and fight every day that they are what's normal. And that's what this battle is all about, in whatever area or issue you're talking about. But Trump's immigration policy, wanting a wall, deport the moment they're caught, no catch and release, whatever, just enforce existing law, 70% of the American people support it. That's normal. That is mainstream. In fact, the vast majority, 88%, opposed separating illegal immigrant families while they're in the country and think it ought not be done. So, but Trump's even in the mainstream on that because he has written an executive order in violation of federal law that keeps families united. Trump also has another idea. And I think this idea is right on the money as well. Trump's plan would prohibit people who enter illegally from getting asylum. Do you realize how much that would ameliorate this situation? People who enter the country illegally are disqualified from getting asylum. That would stop these endless trains. That would stop these migrations. I mean, on a dime. Because asylum is how these families end up getting separated in the first place by design. Asylum is how an illegal immigrant ends up being able to stay and then vanish into the fabric of the country, never showing up for a hearing, never to be heard from again. Trump is dead serious about this. It's the reason he got elected, and he's not going to cave on it. Trust me. But you know, folks, at the same time, I'm in a jocular, I'm in a good mood because our side is prevailing. They are coming unglued, and there's a rule of thumb, and that is when your enemy is making a fool of himself, you stand out of the way and just let it happen. Nothing that they're doing is engendering growth. They're not persuading people on the fence. They're driving people away. You know, that's the dirty little secret here, is that these radical leftists and the mainstream Democrats, and I don't believe there's been a mainstream Democrat for years, but I'm just talking now in comparison to the new young radicals. People like Durbin, Pelosi, I mean, they're radical leftists on their own and always have been. But when they glom on and sign on to some of this anti-American rhetoric, what the hell do they think they're doing? They are driving people away. I think these people in the Democrat Party would be stunned if they really knew how many Obama voters voted for Trump. And I think they're starting to learn. You know, these people lie to themselves like you would not believe. And they convince themselves that the only people that voted for Trump are people that slobber, that are missing a couple of front teeth, that have a vocabulary of about 75 words. They sit on the front porch playing the banjo, spitting tobacco, while shooting up heroin. I mean, that's who they think Trump voters are. And they're now learning Trump voters are college educated, that Trump voters cross the Democratic spectrum, and that many of them were Obama voters. But you know who's really taking it on the chin about now? And that is the conservative never-Trumper crowd. You know, I haven't talked about this on purpose, by design, but I'm just going to mention it here in reference. George Will, before the retirement announcement of Anthony Kennedy, so frustrated that he wrote a piece suggesting the only hope for America is if all Republicans vote Democrat to get rid of Trump and everything related to Trump. Now stop and think about that for a minute. That's almost as off the wall as people on the left are off the wall. That's in the midst of policies that all of these intellectual conservatives have ostensibly been fighting for their whole lives. Trump is implementing much of what they have claimed to believe in. But maybe they didn't believe it that much because as it's being implemented, they can't bring themselves to support it because of the guy who is president while it's happening. Vote Democrat, give up the Supreme Court, give the Supreme Court to the Democrat Party, give up on the idea of America remaining as founded. That's the answer to Donald Trump on the Republican conservative intellectual side. Has there ever been a group of people more wrong about their own party? Maybe, but I can't think of it. Good grief. Is there's ever a bunch of people that ought to be humiliated and embarrassed? It is the faux intellectuals on the never Trump side of conservatism. All the predictions of Trump failure, all the predictions of disaster, not a single one of them have come true. And in fact, it's been just the exact opposite. Now we have the Democrats, for whom we should all vote now. Oh, yeah, that's the solution. Raising hell over the fact that we have a police force at the border. We're talking about 2,000 kids out of 12,000 that ended up being separated. Let me give you some numbers. Because all of this marching, all of these vagina hat wearing Antifa, Black Lives Matter, take your pick, whatever they want to call themselves, screaming and yelling about separated families and how it's un-American and how it's so horrible. There are, right this minute as we speak, 2.7 million children with a parent in prison. 2.7 million. There are 400,000 kids in foster care, separated from their families. These are Americans, by the way. 2.7 million American children with an American parent in prison, 400,000 kids in foster care. But somehow the Democrat Party has zeroed in on 2,000 illegal immigrants who violated the law, who got temporarily separated from their kids. And all of that means America is horrible and sucks, and ICE is out of control. Let them keep talking, folks. They're driving the people we want crazy. They're pulling it off. Here is Bob in Peoria. Bob, you're next. I'm glad you waited. It's great to have you on the EIB network. Hi.
Hello, Rush. This is an honor to speak to you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
I agree with everything you just said. My heart is totally into that, what you've just said. I'm a former Democrat. I'm a retired union leader. I led a union here in Illinois for about 30 years. And right now, as I watch the Democratic Party do what they're doing, they used to stand, it seemed like years and years ago, on moral grounds. They stood on marriage and family and truth, it seemed like. But they've left that. That's why I have left it. They used to be for open borders, or they used to be against open borders. Today, they're for the open borders.
Wait just a second. When were the Democrats opposed to open borders? I missed that.
Well, through the unions, I know.
Oh! I forgot. Your qualifiers union. Yes, absolutely.
That's correct. And today, the unions are doing the same thing. One of the things that I have seen happen with the Democratic Party and is turned something from the Constitution. They've taken the Constitution, which was set up with our founding fathers, both saying that it was set up for a moral and religious society, and it will not work otherwise. And we've taken all of those things, the morality, we've taken God out of everything, and then we're wondering why the Constitution isn't working.
Wait a second. We haven't. They have. That's what you mean.
That's correct. So I don't know if you've ever heard, Rush, and I'm sure you have, of the way back in 1958, there was a 45-point summary. It was a communist agenda to subvert the United States.
Oh, yeah, I'm very familiar, point by point. It's shocking how much of it already has been implemented. I know
absolutely. If I could just say a couple of things about it. First of all, one of the things was to capture the political parties, one or both. The others was to control the schools, soften the curriculum, use student riots to foment public protests, infiltrate the press, continue to degrade all forms of artistic expression, of course, eliminate all laws governing obscenity, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscene books, present homosexuality and promiscuity as normal, infiltrate the churches and replace religion with social agendas, discredit the American Constitution, discredit the Founding Fathers, eliminate all laws and procedures which interfere.
Well, much of that, I'm familiar with it. Much of it has been implemented. One thing about that stuff, though, it wouldn't matter who was behind that. That would be, all of those things would be great tools to undermine the United States. I mean, or any other free society, if you're not a nation, just that you could, if you wanted to undermine a city, if you wanted to undermine a neighborhood, all of those things would do it. Now, they do have, he's right, those things do trace back to Marx and his interpreters. And in the old days, I can remember when this program started 30 years ago, if I were to bring up something like this or the Communist Manifesto, I would discredit myself. Remember those days, Snerdley? Oh, come on, Rush, you can't do it. You see a communist behind every rock. There aren't any communists out there. Don't start sounding like McCarthy. But now these people are openly admitting who they are and what their objectives are, and they are living all of that. They're trying to implement all of that right in front of our faces. And they're doing it under the guise that most of America supports it. That's the role the media plays in this, among other things, is to make it look like a majority of Americans is all for all of this. A majority of Americans is clearly in favor of anybody using whatever bathroom they want at any time of day, anywhere, including a school. America is totally in favor of whatever social aberration you want to come up with. This is one of the roles the media plays in creating this aura or this image that all they're doing is reflecting where a majority of American is, because you watching it are supposed to feel marginalized and part of a small minority, and you're supposed to feel like, my God, I'm losing my country. God, I'm a weirdo, I'm an oddball. Well, you're not. They are. But they have control of the mechanisms. They're even losing those, though, slowly but surely. Look, I appreciate the call out there, Bob, very much. I got to take a brief time out. We'll be back. Much more straight ahead. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. And doing it every day. Rush Limbaugh here behind the golden EIB microphone. Vacation travel going to be very heavy unless Al Gore scares people out of it. What this guy's doing, it's summertime. What does that mean? It's July. It gets hot. Al Gore is out with a warning that it is getting hot. I kid you not. There was probably a snowstorm where he was whenever he made the warning, but he's claiming that it's getting hot out there. And he's warning everybody it's getting hot. And it's really debilitating out there. You sweat and do all kinds. It's hot. And this is designed to make, oh, yeah, global warming. It's the time of year it gets hot. People travel. 4th of July. You know, being the middle of the week is fortunate for some, unfortunate for others. Some people have a very, very long weekend, Like, we could have had a long weekend here had I chosen to, but I wanted to be here. Wanted to be with you. And so did the staff. TSA, I think TSA estimated airport travel this past Friday was the busiest day this year so far, even busier than the Wednesday before last year's Thanksgiving, if you can believe that. I mean, people are on the move. People are feeling uplifted here, folks. People are not shrinking violets at home, worried and afraid to go out. There are significant solutions. There are problems being solved. We're not used to this in the last 8 years of Obama, and maybe even some of the years of George W. Bush, but problems are being solved. This is inspiring. And it's uplifting, because that's what we do, folks. That's what human beings do. We solve problems. Problems are part of life, and solving them is also part of life. And we haven't been solving problems lately. We've been festering in them because we think government should fix things. Well, Trump is a problem solver. And he's come along and he is inspiring others to solve their own problems. In many ways, it's all good. And people are sensing it. They're out there on the move. People are traveling away from home. They're leaving their homes unattended. Some people are hanging in. Some people are lurking and waiting behind, hoping to find empty homes. They're burglars. That's what they do. They steal things while people are away. The opportunity to break into a home left vacant for days at a time is too big to pass up. But more homes in America today than ever before are protected by a Simply Safe home security system. And the burglars probably are not going to be targeting these places. When that loud siren goes off, the odds are the cops know and will be immediately on their way. Simply Safe's system is effective. But folks, these people are growing like you cannot believe. They've taken this industry, home security, and they've innovated it and made it simple while making it better. And more people know their home security systems than have ever known them before. Don't need to call people to ask how to do this or that. Simply Safe is something you go online, you pick it out what you want. You pick the sensors for the doors and windows that you have that you want secured. If you want motion detectors, buy one or two. If you want an HD camera, buy a couple. Put one out by the front door. You can see who's there without answering the door, home or away. Pick out the system you want, and they will check every component, and they will send it to you, and you can put it all together because there aren't any wires. Folks, there's no wires. It's all Wi-Fi and cellular. In an hour, you're up and running. If you turn on the monthly monitoring, which is $14.99, you get an app for the phone that allows you to control the whole system from your phone. This holiday week, Simply Safe is offering $200 off one of their best-selling systems. It's all the components you need. Entry sensors, motion and glass break sensors, HD security camera. You buy it online, simplysafeusa.com. No promo code needed if you use that address. simplysafeusa.com. Look for the Independence Day sale, $200 off, 60-day money-back guarantee. You're out nothing if you don't like it. You will, but 60 days if you don't.
The courage to fight and the talent.